listening to This Week in Big Sky Basketball as we take you around the conference for all the latest in Big Sky hoops. Now, here's your host, Scott Gerard.
Welcome on in. It's the final edition of This Week in Big Sky Basketball. I'm Scott Gerard. Hey, the road to Reno is here. We have all the seating information for you in this program, as well as all the information about what should be a great event this time next week in Reno. On top of that, we got a great lineup of guests. Big Sky Commissioner Andrea Williams kicking things off, followed by Montana State coach Trish Binford. And then we'll be joined by Skyline Sports' Colter Nuanez in the final segment to discuss his views on Big Sky men's and women's basketball. But we'll tip things off with a discussion of what happened last week in Big Sky men's basketball. Let's start with conference-leading North Dakota, picking up a win at Northern Colorado in their lone game this past weekend. Montana State earned a big home win over Montana in Bozeman. Sac State dropped a game at Northern Arizona on Thursday before rebounding against Southern Utah on Saturday. Portland State topped both the Thunderbirds and the Lumberjacks. Idaho picked up wins over Weber State and Idaho State, and Eastern Washington clinched a first-round bye at next week's conference tournament with wins over the Wildcats and the Bengals. All right, let's always a pleasure and an honor to open up the Sports Graphics phone line and welcome in the commissioner of the Big Sky Conference, Andrea Williams. Commissioner, how are you?
Good morning, Scott. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Always a pleasure and an honor to catch up with you. I know this is a busy time of year for you, is it not? I mean, things are hopping there in the offices.
Well, we appreciate any opportunity to talk about the Big Sky and certainly promote our basketball championships that are coming up next week. But we certainly have a full staff that is keeping busy because, I like to tell people that March Madness has nothing to do with the games on the court, but all the work that people do behind the scenes to create a great atmosphere and experience for our student athletes and fans.
No doubt about it, too. Let's talk a little bit about the first 8 months on the job. You've been all around the league. You've been in all the cities. If things, I'm sure there for a while it was like trying to drink water from a fire hose, but if things started to slow down for you a bit?
Without question, you've got that right. It's slowed down a little bit in terms of, learning who the key players are and who to speak to and who to work with on certain issues, but still learning about the league and its uniqueness is going to take some time. And, the conference has been around for over 50 years and has a great foundation and has great success over the years, and so really trying to catch up as best as I possibly can. But everyone on campus and our folks in our office have been just extremely gracious and patient as I've made the transition.
You've made a conscious effort to travel all around the conference and meet with these institutions. What are some of the highlights of that process been for you?
You know what? Selfishly, it served a lot of great things for me in particular. We have great history and tradition among our Big Sky institutions, and so it was important to me to get out to every institution this year, and in particularly to learn a little bit more about the culture and the uniqueness of each school, and also the challenges that they face respectively. And so with that, I had an opportunity to meet with university personnel, inclusive of the university president, to the staff members within the athletic department, as well as head coaches, had the opportunity to visit with student athletes as well, and a host of other different committees that are all attached to the athletic program in some shape or form. And so it was really good, and it was eye-opening for me. The Big Sky, we are a number of like-type institutions, but there's some differences out there as well. And so when you go to a city like Portland or you go to a city like Missoula, you've got rabid Big Sky alum and fans, administrators, players, coaches, but they have different experiences based on where they're located, and so that certainly has helped me over the last 8 months.
Big Sky Conference Commissioner Andrea Williams joining us here on This Week in Big Sky Basketball. Hey, we're all ready to head out to Reno for the 2017 Basketball Championships. You got 1 year under your belt. In your 8 months on the job, what's some of the feedback you've heard from the institutions about last year's tournament, and what changes are fans expecting to see this year in Reno?
Sure, Scott. And, unfortunately, I wasn't part of the team last year when they had their first neutral site basketball championship, and so I'm sad I missed it. But what's great is I've gotten a lot of feedback as I've been out to each of our campuses, and so what's unique was it was very important to our coaches to move to a neutral site event. The Big Sky is one of the few conferences out there that actually have a combined men's and women's basketball championship, same weekend, same venue. And so I think that that's special in its own right, and the fact fact that the conference was able to host a successful event last year, I just think speaks to the volume of the capacity of our not only our staff but all of our folks on campus. And so last year was a great step in the right direction in terms of building a neutral site event. In terms of the comments that I've been hearing across our conference, it's been very positive. The coaches really appreciated the fact that they could take their teams to a neutral site. The fact that we now can have all of our institutions participate in the tournament, whereas before that wasn't the case. And then also when you talk about the ability to market a championship, the fact that we have the dates that are prescribed, we know where the tournament's going to be, it allows us to really promote the event to our fans both at a campus local level, but then also into the community in Reno. And so there are a number of benefits in going this direction, and certainly it's been great for us. And then also it's a cost factor, to be honest. We certainly have reduced our expenses because our teams don't have to know, 3, 4, 5 days out where they're going to travel to. It also allows their friends and family to make plans to be able to get to Reno in advance because we know where the championships is going to be. And so first year out, there have been a lot of positive feedback provided to us, but we also know that going into year 2, we have to raise the bar, and the expectations are going to be higher.
I know change is never easy, but isn't this just good for the brand of Big Sky basketball and the brand of the Big Sky Conference overall to have this in a neutral site?
Without question, and I think you've seen it across the country in terms of people really value the neutral site because you get away from that perceived home court competitive advantage. So I think, whether it's conference postseason or the NCAA tournament, you see that that's the focus in terms of giving everyone a fair shot at competing to get that final NCAA automatic qualifier berth that comes out of participating in the championship. And so I think it's great for the league in terms of being able to have a postseason championship where we have a home, where we can grow it, where all of our schools can participate. It only elevates the brand of the Big Sky. And so I know I'm speaking for all of our institutions as well as our staff and fans to where we're excited to get games going on Monday and return to Reno and really build off of year 1.
Andrea Williams, kind enough to join us here on This Week in Big Sky Basketball, the commissioner of the Big Sky. I know you got a lot on your plate as the commissioner, but you also serve in a variety of different capacities as well. One thing that I think is so incredibly important in the college landscape right now, you serve on an NCAA panel that is helping promote the prevention of sexual assault in college sports. Talk to us about being on this panel. What are some of the objectives and some of the good that you're trying to do on this panel?
Certainly, and it's a tough subject to really address, but it's in particular one that's very critical to what's happening on our campuses, as well as the impact and effect that it has on athletic departments across the country. And so, I certainly feel humbled to serve on this committee. It came from the NCAA Board of Governors to where they identified the fact that we needed to have a special commission focused on these efforts. And the individuals I serve with, we have probably about 25 or 30 committee members. We have university presidents, we've got administrators, coaches, faculty, but what's really impressive is the fact that we have a number of individuals who work in health and safety, those who are advocates, those who have worked with sexual assault prevention in the past. And so we've got a really unique variety of individuals with very diverse backgrounds, and I think that helps lend to the conversations that are that are being had at that level. And so, as I mentioned earlier, it's a tough conversation to get your arms around. And really the primary focus is not just to educate people on what it is, but ultimately prevent it. And the more we can train, provide information, give data, and really make it at the forefront of conversations that individuals are having at the institutional level, we hope to completely prevent sexual assault versus having to react to it. And so we have a lot of great people that both serve on this commission, in addition to on university campuses and athletic departments whose specific roles are to prevent, aid, inform, educate, and train as it relates to sexual assault prevention. And I'm proud of the work that's being done, but we have a long road ahead of us.
Well, finally, Commissioner, we appreciate you taking a few moments out of what I know is a busy schedule for you, but let's talk about the next 6 to 8 months for this conference, perhaps leading into football season. What are some of the goals and what are some of the objectives of this conference that you want to try to move forward?
You know, that's a great question, and I think the answer to that is a little bit of a moving target. But I think that there's some low-hanging fruit that exists out there that hopefully we can come to some closure with over the next few months. Certainly, you're probably familiar with our television contract with Root Sports, and so we continue to work through that, and specifically with the promotion of football coming up next year. And so that's a priority for us right now. We went through a strategic plan the last probably 12, 14 months. And so we've got some great goals that have been identified and coming out of that plan. And one of those is a branding campaign coming into the summer and then specifically being unveiled going into the fall sports season. So, you know, we span over, I feel like, half the western border of the continent over here. And so I think it's very important for individuals to know who the Big Sky is and for us to get out the messaging in terms of the brand on which we want to portray. And so that's something I'm really excited about us really embarking on over the summer. And then, you know, just elevating the league. And so whether that's, you know, special attention to the way we manage our governance process, which I know sounds very boring, but also spending a little bit more time talking about our scheduling, and in particular men's and women's basketball. And then certainly with our conference realignment that we have going on with the Big Sky, we're really engaging with our coaches and administrators on campus to really identify how are we going to move forward in 2018 and beyond, especially for our Olympic sports. So our plate is full, but it's a good, hearty plate, and we're having a great time doing it. And so please be on the lookout for upcoming big things coming from the Big Sky going into the summer.
No doubt about that. Commissioner, thanks so much for your time. We look forward to catching up with you again in Reno next week.
All right, Scott. See you next week. Thank you.
You got it. That's Commissioner Andrea Williams joining us on the Sports Graphics phone line. Sports Graphics, the official graphics provider of the Big Sky Conference. Let's look ahead to the final week of the regular season in men's basketball action. Weber State will look to lock down a first-round tournament bye as they take on Montana and Montana State. The Bobcats and Grizzlies also looking for a first-round bye and will face off Idaho State this week. North Dakota plays host to Sacramento State and Portland State as they look to clinch their first ever Big Sky regular season title. Idaho and Eastern Washington make the road swing through northern Arizona and southern Utah. Your clinching scenarios look like this. North Dakota can clinch a regular season title with a win this weekend. Eastern Washington needs to finish ahead of UND in the standings to clinch the regular season crown. And so keep an eye. There's some interesting games, some interesting scenarios coming up this weekend. We'll take a short break, come back, and take a look at the Big Sky women's basketball scene. We'll also chat with Montana State women's coach Trish Binford. It's all straight ahead. You're listening to This Week in Big Sky Basketball.
You're listening to This Week in Big Sky Basketball.
Second segment of This Week in Big Sky Basketball, final show of the season. Hey, next week we'll be in Reno, and you can catch every game of the 2017 Big Sky Men's and Women's Basketball Championships on either streaming services or on television. First, you can catch every game of the Big Sky Women's Basketball Championship on WatchBigSky.com, as myself and former Montana star Krista Redpath will broadcast the women's tournament. Then you can watch every game of the Big Sky Men's Championship, excluding the championship, on WatchBigSky.com, as I'll be hanging out with Weber State coach Joe Cravens, bringing you all the action. Then join ESPN's Roxy Bernstein and Corey Williams as the men's championship game tips off on ESPNU at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. Also, the men's championship game will be available on Westwood One Radio nationally, with former Gonzaga star Dan Dickau helping out on the broadcast. All right, let's switch our attention to the women's side of the Big Sky Conference as we take a look at last week's action. First, North Dakota stayed in front of the rest of the field with a win over Northern Colorado. Also, Montana State staying in the hunt for the regular season title with a win over Montana. Eastern Washington with a good weekend of action as the Eagles swept Idaho State and Weber State to stay in the driver's seat for the 4th seed in the tournament. Idaho earned a split on the same trip, earning a win over Weber State. Then Southern Utah earned its first league win, getting a win over Portland State. Thunderbirds lost to Sac State on Saturday as Portland State defeated Northern Arizona. So here's the way it's going to work out. North Dakota will earn a league title and a top seed in Reno as long as it wins 2 games or earns a split, with Montana State doing the same. If North Dakota and Montana State tie, then your Bobcats earn the league's top seed. So let's go out to the Sports Graphics phone line as we welcome in the head coach of the Montana State Bobcats, Coach Trish Binford. Coach, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. Do you pay attention to all these scenarios, or do you just kind of go one game at a time and let's just play the game in front of us?
Yeah, I think you could drive yourself crazy trying to do the latter. So we just focus on the next game on the schedule, which is Idaho State.
I need some ibuprofen just reading that. So, yeah, I know where you're going.
Well, you guys probably know all the scenarios better than we could ever come up with anyway. So we'll just we'll take care of our games on our schedule, and then you tell us who we're playing next.
Sounds great. Well, let's start with your last weekend's game against Montana. You were down big to the Lady Grizz, but then had a massive performance in the third quarter. How does your team continue to find some new and interesting ways to win ball games?
Well, I just think it's about getting into a flow. And third quarter, we got a lot off of our defense, and I thought that established the tempo to break away. But once you start knocking down shots, a lot of things become easier. But really proud of our third quarter performance, trying to take control of that game.
Last year, you entered into the tournament as a top seed. You lost in that opening round, and I'm sure your team is cognizant of that. Is that something you talk about, or is it, again, that's something down the line that you'll address going into the tournament?
Well, we've actually talked so much this year about this being this year's team, and so I think separating the years and the seasons and the teams is really important because everybody has a different identity, and just really been proud of this year's team and how they've found our new identity and our success, and just being able to stay locked into the present. You know,
you've had a lot of great players throughout your years in Bozeman, but Peyton Ferris, she's joined us on this program, tremendous asset for your program as well. Where does she rank on that list?
She's got to be one of the top ones. I really cannot recall anybody in our program that has been as successful as her with the amount of adversity and injuries that she has overcome. And I think that really shows just the special kind of character she is and perseverant mentality. She's truly a tough kid all the way around, but one-of-a-kind competitors as well.
All right, so as we get ready for Reno next week, each team have different protocols on how they handle things. How do you manage trips like these, and how do you try to keep your team focused?
Well, I think the good part for this year is that we finish at home. Last year we finished at North Dakota, so we had to make our decision for travel very early. And this year we're going to stay home a few extra days and not get there so early. I think that will help us a little bit with not being distracted or focusing too long on those sorts of things. So our plan is to practice here and then travel on Monday and take advantage of that practice time on Tuesday.
Interesting. You got a 2-game homestand with Idaho State and Weber State before you head to Reno. Idaho State knocked you out of the tournament last year. They continue to play well. Any special plans on how you coach this game or how you manage these last two?
Well, I just think we're trying to build off of what we've been doing the last few games and just stay in that rather than the opponent that we're facing. We're just trying to focusing on building some things that we're doing well. I think we've progressed on some of the defensive schemes, and offensively we really like our mentality right now when we share the basketball. So I think if you can focus more on what you're trying to do and emphasize, then you don't get caught so much up on your opponent.
You know what, the way the conference is this year, is there much of a difference between the first seed or the second seed going into the tournament?
Well, it certainly hasn't shown for us, or I think a lot of teams in the conference, there's just so much parity. And if you look at majority of these games, they're going down to the wire in the last 2-3 minutes. So you just have to be ready to play your consistent best every night you show up.
Well, Coach, we appreciate your time. We look forward to catching up with you coming up next week in Reno, and we look forward to seeing how your team does down there.
Sounds great. Appreciate it.
All right. There you go. Montana State coach Trish Binford here on the Sports Graphics phone line. Let's take a look at the week's games in Big Sky basketball. Remember, it's a Wednesday-Friday setup, not Thursday-Saturday, as everybody gets geared up for the conference tournament next week. As we mentioned, Idaho State and Weber State will travel to play at Montana and Montana State. North Dakota and Northern Colorado head to the West Coast to play Sacramento State and Portland State, and Eastern Washington and Idaho host Southern Utah and Northern Arizona. And you know the drill, folks. You can watch all these games online at watchbigsky.com. We'll take our final break and come back with Skyline Sports Colter Nuanez. We'll also give you some more information about the road to Reno. It's all when we return here on This Week in Big Sky Basketball.
Now, back to This Week in Big Sky Basketball.
All right, final segment here on This Week in Big Sky Basketball. I'm Scott Gerard. Hey, it's our last show of either both our football and basketball shows for the 2016-2017 season. But if there's an episode you really enjoyed from either the football or basketball shows, go to the Big Sky Conference YouTube page, and you'll find the file for This Week in Big Sky Football or This Week in Big Sky Basketball, and you can enjoy the video version of every single show absolutely for free. Speaking of free, all right, get it done, folks. Download the Big Sky Conference app. The app is available on the App Store or Google Play. It allows you to access exclusive Big Sky content while also allowing you the opportunity to gain access to all information you need to know about Reno. That's the Big Sky Conference app on the App Store or Google Play. All right, time to go out to the phone lines. Welcome in the man who covers all things Big Sky Conference like no other. We're talking about Skyline Sports, Colter Nuanez. Colter, how you doing, man?
Fantastic. How are you, Scott?
I'm doing well. Hey, we're down the home stretch, man. One weekend left in the regular season. So let's talk about the final push for the seeding going into Reno. Who are the teams on both the men's and women's side who are peaking at the right time? And maybe who are the teams that are not playing their best going into the conference tournament?
Well, I think on the women's side, North Dakota's done a fantastic job of maintaining its role as the front runner ever since it beat Northern Colorado. Montana State's obviously playing very well. Bobcats in recent years have been plagued by late-season dips, and it looked like they might have another when they lost at Portland State, but then they bounced back and had a huge win at Sac State, and then they beat the Lady Grizz last week. So I think if Montana State can continue their home winning streak coming out of this weekend with 2 home games left, I think they'll be right there too. North Dakota obviously playing well. Northern Colorado not playing as well as they were, but when they were kind of the front runners, I think Idaho State will definitely give some teams problems on the women's side, as they always do. Seton Sobolewski, one of the best coaches in the league. And then on the men's side, Eastern Washington playing tremendously well. North Dakota has a chance to sew up its first Big Sky title with a pair of home games this weekend, which would be huge for their program. But then on the flip side of that, Weber State, they're definitely reeling right now, having lost 4 out of 6. They were the front runner for a really long time, and now they're basically in this pivotal position where, to me, I think they need to at least split with the Montana schools and maybe even sweep to ensure themselves a first-round sweep, or a first-round bye, excuse me. And that's a crazy situation to be in, considering how far out in front everybody they were. But I think Montana State definitely playing well on the men's side. Montana, not so well. So there's definitely a bunch left to be decided. But it's strange on the men's side. The 2 premier programs, Weber State and Montana, limping into the tournament for the first time in a long time.
Well, let's go back to the women's side. It's come down to North Dakota and Montana State. Now, UND, they need to win out to secure that number 1 seed. How tall of an order is that, especially going on the road?
Oh, yeah, going on the road, and especially against 2 really unorthodox teams as well. I mean, I think that the Portland State-Sac State road trip has been one of the toughest in the league on the women's side. Sacramento State, obviously an incredibly tough prep with the style Bunkie Harkleroad wants to face. It doesn't matter if the Hornets are in the top or bottom of the league standings. He likes to press from opening buzzer till final buzzer. And then you flip over and you play Portland State, who's one of the most athletic teams in the league, and they run that 2-3 zone that can kind of trick you into taking some bad shots sometimes. So tall order for North Dakota, no doubt. And that coupled with the fact that Montana State, who's riding a 23-game home winning streak, which I believe is the 4th longest in all of Division I basketball, you have to think that the Bobcats are going to take care of business at home with 2 straight home games here. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. But Montana State, they kind of snuck their way into the title last year. They lost their last 2 games and still won the outright title for the first time in school history. This year they have a chance to win a couple and maybe push past North Dakota and into a second straight title. So it's going to be a fun weekend to see which team comes out on top.
Well, we're all packing our bags, getting ready for that trip to Reno, and I know you've been a big advocate for the tournament being in a neutral site, but you know what? If we don't make this change, we're all heading to Grand Forks for the men's and the women's side. It's interesting to see how North Dakota has really separated itself on both sides of, or on both the men's and women's side of the ledger when it comes to basketball.
You have to give so much kudos to their athletic department in general, because you have to think, too, they also shared the Big Sky Conference football title with Eastern Washington in the fall. So this athletic department is surging. It's really a bummer that they've decided that they're going to leave the league here in a couple of years, because they've definitely established themselves as one of the premier athletic departments in the entire league. But good for Travis Brewster, good for Brian Jones. I think that the North Dakota women is a little bit of a surprise to me. You lose a player like Maya Lloyd, who was a fantastic player in this league, and I think a lot of people think, okay, you'll be a solid team, as they always are. Well, I don't know if anybody thought they'd be 14-2 right now. But on the men's side, great job by Brian Jones, because I think a lot of people did see this coming. You have the preseason MVP in Quentin Hooker. You have as much depth as anybody in the league. So I think both those coaches, they deserve a ton of credit. And both those teams, they deserve a ton of credit, too, for taking care of business at home. With where Grand Forks is, it's a tough trip to get there no matter what. So it's always going to be a tough game for visiting opponents. So to take care of business, protect home court like both those teams have, that's been huge in their ascension to the first-place spots in the Big Sky Conference.
All right, the all-conference teams will be selected next week. If you had to choose a men's MVP and Coach of the Year and a women's MVP and Coach of the Year, who has your vote?
I think on the men's side, for me, I think it'll be a crime if it's not Jake Wiley. I think that, he has been nothing short of dominant. We saw a couple really, really dominant big men in the Big Sky last year, Joel Ballenboy and Martin Breuning, and Wiley has absolutely blown their statistical production out of the water. He's averaging 26.5 points, 10.5 rebounds a game in conference play. You take the 2 games against Montana out, which this is a complete tangent, but I think Fabian Krizlovich deserves recognition as the Defensive Player of the Year simply because of his ability to slow down Jake Wiley when Eastern Washington played Montana. But you take those 2 10-point games out, Wiley's literally going 30-12 every night against Big Sky opponents. So I think that has to be the runaway pick for the MVP on the men's side. And then we just mentioned Brian Jones. I think Jim Hayford at Eastern Washington definitely has an argument for Coach of the Year. His team was picked to finish in the middle of the pack, and they're right there as the number 2 seed. I think Brian Fish at Montana State definitely has an argument as well. His Bobcats picked to finish 6th and 7th, and they're in the hunt for a bye. But I think North Dakota, they were definitely in everybody's top 3 or 4, but to win their first conference title as a Big Sky member and to do it in Quentin Hooker's senior season, I think it's got to be Brian Jones on the men's side for Coach of the Year.
Well, Coulter, we appreciate you not only today, but throughout the rest of the weeks here on This Week in Big Sky Basketball. Great insight, great analysis. We appreciate you helping out this season here on This Week in Big Sky Hoops.
Hey, pleasure. Thanks so much for having me, and I hope I see everybody in Reno.
You got it, man. Coulter Nuanez of Skyline Sports here on the Sports Graphics phone line. Sports Graphics, the official graphics provider of the Big Sky Conference. All right, that'll do it for us. Not just this show, but this season. Big thanks to Big Sky Conference Commissioner Andrea Williams for joining us, as well as Montana State coach Trish Binford and Skyline Sports Coulter Nuanez. Also, big thanks to Austin Horton, who puts the show together each and every week. Also, the executive producers of this show, John Oglesby and Jason Ashcraft from the Big Sky Conference, for all the work they do to make this show run smoothly. Also, all of our affiliates along the Big Sky Conference. Thank you for listening and watching as well. I'm Scott Gerard. We'll be back with you next season for This Week in Big Sky Football, and I'll be in Reno next week. Enjoy all the games here on This Week in Big Sky.